Positive change often begins with an uncomfortable truth. When a relationship ends, there's an emotional crash that follows. It's natural to want to fix it, numb it, or skip past it entirely. But the first and most important thing to do is allow yourself to truly feel what's happening. Not to judge those feelings, not to suppress them, but to sit with them calmly and consciously. Emotions are messengers, not enemies. They show up to tell you what mattered, what hurt, and what needs care. Pain after a breakup isn't proof of weakness, it's proof of connection. It means something meaningful was there. But what often happens is that people confuse feeling the pain with feeding it. Feeling the pain is allowing the tears to fall, admitting the loneliness, being honest about the ache. Feeding the pain is replaying the past on a loop, stalking their social media, reading old texts, or fantasizing about getting back together while ignoring the reasons you broke up. That's not feeling, it's reopening a wound every time it starts to close. You don't have to act strong by pretending you're unaffected. Real strength lies in letting the emotion flow through you without letting it define your days. It's in knowing this sadness won't last forever, but not rushing to numb it either. We live in a world that celebrates fast recoveries, instant distractions, and constant noise. But healing is not about distraction, it's about presence. Every moment you stay present with what you're feeling without running from it, you take your power back inch by inch. There's a big difference between mourning what was and clinging to what's no longer real. Sometimes we're not grieving the person, we're grieving the fantasy, the future we imagined, the version of ourselves we thought we were with them. And that's okay. Letting go doesn't mean it didn't matter. It means you matter enough to stop holding yourself hostage to a chapter that's over. The pain is valid, but your life isn't meant to stay paused in its shadow. You owe yourself a forward motion, even if it's slow. Create intentional space to feel. Whether that's journaling, talking with a friend, or sitting in silence and letting the tears come to it with love for yourself. Feel what you feel, but be careful what you feed. What you focus on grows. If you focus on what's missing, you'll see lack everywhere. But if you focus on what's rising, your strength, your growth, your wisdom, you'll see new life forming out of the pain. This doesn't require perfection. It just requires you to keep showing up. The heart is resilient, but it needs your cooperation. If you want to heal, you have to stop picking the scab and start nurturing the skin underneath. That begins with acceptance. Acceptance that this hurts, but it's not the end. Acceptance that you're worthy, even if someone couldn't see it. Acceptance that closure may not come from them, but it will come from you choosing yourself again. And every time you sit with your emotions instead of running, you're rebuilding from the inside out. Positive momentum begins the moment you realize that your time and energy are yours again. After a breakup, it's easy to let your thoughts revolve around what someone else is doing, who they're with, and why things ended. But there comes a moment where you have to choose to pivot away from the noise and back to yourself. That's not denial, that's direction. This is your chance to reclaim the parts of your life that may have gone quiet while you were so focused on keeping something alive that no longer served you. Your time is your most valuable asset, and it deserves to be invested in things that return value. The thoughts you think, the people you speak to, the places you go, they all pull energy from your emotional account. So when you're coming out of heartbreak, you have to become intentional about where your attention goes. If every moment of the day is spent reviewing old memories or wondering if they'll reach out, then your emotional currency is still being spent on something that's no longer here. Recovery begins with a decision to redirect. Your energy can rebuild your life or drain it depending on where you point it. This is where small, powerful changes start to matter. Wake up and move your body, not because you're trying to look a certain way, but because motion creates emotion. Step into new routines, not because you're trying to forget, but because you're remembering who you are without them. There's a version of you that existed before the relationship, and there's a version of you waiting to be discovered after it. That discovery begins the moment you take your focus off the past. This is your opportunity to audit your life and ask, what have I been putting off? What lights me up that I haven't made time for? Maybe it's a hobby, a passion project, a fitness goal, a trip, or a skill you've always wanted to master. These aren't just distractions, they're reconnections to your joy, your curiosity, and your sense of purpose. When you begin to reclaim your time and fill it with things that make you feel alive, you're not running from the past, you're building a life that doesn't leave room to stay stuck in it. Sometimes we wait for closure or clarity before moving forward, but both often arrive once we start moving. You may not feel ready, and that's okay. But readiness is often a result of action, not a prerequisite for it. The more you say yes to yourself, the more confidence you build. The more you step into spaces that stretch and excite you, the more you remind yourself that life is still happening and that it can still be beautiful. You won't wake up one day and suddenly feel over it. You will, however, look back and realize you've been slowly outgrowing the pain. Reclaiming your time doesn't mean becoming busy for the sake of it. It means being intentional. It means asking yourself, what does my best life look like, even if I'm building it alone for now? That's not a lonely question, it's an empowering one. It means your happiness isn't on hold waiting for a relationship. You get to create something meaningful today, even if your heart still feels heavy. Your calendar, your choices, your mornings and evenings, these are all places where you can gently shift from surviving to rebuilding. Positive change begins when you start to dream again, even if those dreams feel far away. After a breakup, your world can shrink down to just one thing: the loss. It's like the pain becomes the lens through which everything else is viewed. But pain is not meant to be a permanent filter. It's a moment, a season, a signal that something ended, yes, but also that something else is now possible. The question is, what do you want to build with the space that's been created? Your life is not defined by who walked away, it's shaped by what you choose to do next. The vision you create for yourself becomes the compass that pulls you forward. You don't have to see every step right now, but you do need to give yourself permission to look ahead and imagine something more. Maybe that more is a career you've always dreamed of, or a version of yourself you lost touch with. Maybe it's a level of peace you've never actually known. Whatever it is, it has to be bigger than your heartbreak. When you're consumed by pain, it's easy to believe that healing is just about feeling better. But the truth is, healing is also about becoming someone stronger, deeper, and more aligned with who you really are. The goal isn't just to get over them. The goal is to grow beyond who you were when you were with them. That growth requires vision. Not a vision based on revenge or trying to prove your worth, but a vision based on love for the life you want to lead and the person you're becoming. A breakup creates an opening. At first it feels like a hole, but over time, if you let it, that hole becomes a doorway. You start to ask different questions. What kind of life do I want now? What kind of people do I want to be surrounded by? What values matter to me the most? When you begin to answer those questions with clarity, you start building a future with intention. That future becomes your focus, not because you're ignoring the past, but because you finally realize your past doesn't get to define you. Every time you choose to invest energy in your growth, you're building that vision piece by piece. It's in the books you read, the habits you form, the people you allow into your space. It's in the way you speak to yourself and the standards you decide to keep. And slowly, what felt like emptiness becomes purpose. The world starts to open again, not because it's changed, but because you have. You begin to see that your life can still be exciting, still be fulfilling, still be yours in every sense of the word. When the pain screams loud, you whisper back with vision. Not denial, not false positivity, but real, grounded hope. You remind yourself that the life you're creating is not about what you lost. It's about what you're gaining. You hold that picture close of who you're becoming, of the peace you're claiming, of the future you deserve. You allow that picture to grow clearer with each step forward. It becomes your new why. And the more you feed that vision, the smaller the pain begins to feel by comparison. Positive transformation often begins with reflection, not reaction. After a breakup, the first instinct is to count everything you've lost: the time, the dreams, the connection, maybe even a sense of who you were with that person. But true growth begins when you stop just tallying the cost and start searching for the meaning. Every relationship leaves behind a blueprint. Somewhere in the mess is a message. The goal is to find it, not to fix the past, but to free yourself from repeating it. When something breaks, you can either curse the pieces or study how it fell apart. That doesn't mean blaming yourself or carrying the full weight of the ending. It means getting honest. What patterns did you fall into? What needs did you ignore? What red flags did you explain away? These questions are not meant to shame, they're meant to sharpen. They help you see where you gave too much, settled too quickly, or stayed too long. This is where awareness is born, and awareness is the beginning of wisdom. The lesson is not always obvious, and that's okay. Sometimes it comes in layers. Maybe you learned how deeply you can love, or how strong you are when things fall apart. Maybe you learned what kind of communication doesn't work for you, or what boundaries you need to start setting. The lesson might show you who you don't want to be again, or it might reveal who you're capable of becoming. But you have to pause long enough to look back with the intention to learn, not with bitterness. but with clarity. It's easy to get stuck in the story of what they did or didn't do, but your power doesn't live there. Your power lives in what you choose to take away from the experience. That shift changes everything. You stop being a victim of your past and start becoming the architect of your future. You're no longer just someone who got hurt, you're someone who's getting smarter, stronger, and more self-aware. And that awareness becomes your protection, not your prison. It's what allows you to love better next time without losing yourself again. Every heartbreak carries a mirror. It shows you how you saw yourself when you were with them. Were you constantly trying to earn love? Were you afraid to speak your needs? Did you lose parts of yourself just to keep the connection going? These reflections are uncomfortable, but they're also revealing. They help you course correct before the next chapter begins. You start to realize that healing isn't just about getting past the pain, it's about pulling the wisdom from it. That wisdom becomes the foundation of your next version. You don't have to have all the answers today, but you do have to be willing to ask better questions. What does love mean to me now? What qualities actually matter most in a partner? What part of me still needs healing before I invite someone else in? When you start asking with honesty, you start receiving answers that shape you. And those answers aren't just lessons, they're leverage. They lift you out of regret and carry you into a mindset where growth becomes more important than closure. Positive growth is about rising, not retreating. When your heart has been broken, one of the strongest urges is to protect yourself at all costs. You promise yourself you'll never let anyone in like that again. You start to see vulnerability as weakness and love as risk. But real strength isn't in building walls, it's in building standards. It's in knowing what you deserve and deciding that your next experience of love will honor that without requiring you to shrink, hide, or harden. You are not weak for having loved deeply. You are not foolish for having trusted. That was not the mistake. The mistake, if any, was confusing someone's potential with their consistency or their charm with their capacity to truly care for your heart. But love itself, that wasn't the problem. That part of you, the part that's open, giving, and emotionally available, is not something to shut down. It's something to protect by being more selective about who has access to it. That's where your standards come in. Standards are not walls. Walls keep everything out, including joy. Standards let the right people in while keeping chaos, confusion, and inconsistency out. When you elevate your standards, you're not becoming cold. You're becoming clear. You no longer settle for people who half show up. You no longer make excuses for behavior that drains your peace. You learn to notice how you feel around someone, not just how much you like them, but how they treat you, how they speak to you, how they hold space for your heart. This doesn't happen overnight. After heartbreak, it's normal to feel guarded. But guarded is different from grounded. Guarded means you're acting from fear. Grounded means you've learned from experience. When you're grounded, you don't run from connection, you just meet it with discernment. You stop romanticizing red flags and start requiring emotional safety. You stop hoping someone will change and start choosing people who don't need to be convinced to care. And the more you honor that within yourself, the more peaceful your relationships become. The pain taught you something valuable. Maybe it showed you how much you were willing to overlook just to avoid being alone. Maybe it showed you how much of yourself you lost trying to be easy to love. And now you get to use that awareness as a filter. Not a filter to block love, but a filter to protect your energy. You become someone who doesn't chase love, but attracts it by being rooted in self-respect. That shift changes everything. You begin to love without losing your center. You begin to care without collapsing into people who don't show up for you. When you elevate your standards, you also elevate your experience of life. You no longer entertain people who confuse attention with affection. You no longer stay in conversations that feel like you're convincing someone of your worth. Your peace becomes your priority. You still love deeply, but you no longer give endlessly to relationships that don't pour anything back. This doesn't make you bitter, it makes you intentional. It makes your love deeper because now it's grounded in truth, not fantasy. You start to see that love is not about intensity. It's about consistency. It's not about grand moments. It's about how someone shows up when it's inconvenient, when it's messy, when it really matters. And when your standards rise, you stop being impressed by chemistry alone. You begin to value someone's emotional maturity, their ability to communicate, their willingness to do the work. You understand that real connection isn't about how fast you fall, it's about how well you grow together. This process also forces you to look at the standards you keep for yourself. Because we don't just attract what we want, we attract what we tolerate. So ask yourself, What parts of me are still settling? Where am I choosing temporary comfort over long-term peace? Where am I asking someone to give me what I haven't yet given myself? These are powerful questions. They shift the focus from blame to responsibility. They remind you that raising your standards isn't just about other people. It's about how you treat yourself when no one is watching. You start making decisions that support your self-worth, not your insecurities. You stop texting people who leave you confused. You stop waiting for someone to see your value. You start living like you already know it. You surround yourself with people who reflect your values, not just your fears. You stop watering dead plants and start investing in relationships that grow with you. This is what it means to elevate. It's not just about having higher expectations. It's about building a life that reflects them. At first, this might feel lonely. When you stop settling, the silence can be loud. But don't confuse solitude with lack. That space you've created by letting go of what didn't serve you, that's not emptiness. That's room. Room for better. Room for peace. Room for someone who matches your emotional capacity and honors your heart the way you deserve. And most importantly, room for yourself to rediscover your joy, your power, and the parts of you that were never meant to be dimmed to keep someone else comfortable. As you raise your standards, you start to attract people who meet them effortlessly, not because you've become hard to love, but because you finally understand that love isn't meant to be hard. It's meant to feel safe, to grow you, to elevate your life, not drain it. And when someone comes along who sees you clearly, who loves you without confusion, you'll be ready. Not because you've built a wall, but because you've built a life where love is a welcome addition, not a desperate need. This mindset keeps you open, but not exposed. It helps you stay hopeful without being naive. It allows you to trust again, but this time with wisdom. You're no longer trying to prove your worth. You're choosing people who already recognize it. You're no longer giving to be chosen. You're choosing yourself first and allowing others to meet you at that level. That's what it means to love with boundaries. That's what it means to stay soft without being fragile. That's what it means to protect your heart without closing it.